Maybe it's a classic or maybe a flop. Has Katie seen it? She probably has not. She'll sit down and watch it if it's good or it's bad.
Hey, have you seen this?
No, Katie hasn't seen that.
Hi, I'm Katie, and if I had a nickel for every time someone said to me, "Wait, you haven't seen this movie? Oh my God, you need to see this movie," I'd be very rich. So this is my podcast where I finally watch those movies you all have told me I need to see, and I tell you what I think. Welcome to another episode of Katie Hasn't Seen That, and I have a good one for you today. At least I think I do. It is the finale of season 3 of Katie Hasn't Seen That, and I can't believe we're here already. 10 episodes, locked and loaded, and let's dive into the last one. But before I do, remember you can support the podcast over on Ko-fi and join the Popcorn Posse, where you get behind the scenes of the podcast, early access to the YouTube episodes, because you can watch the show on YouTube now. Video of me talking to you like we're having coffee, we're sitting down, we're chatting about films. You can pull me up on your TV while you're cooking dinner, and it's like we're hanging out. I mean, I think that's pretty fun. I like that idea. Go over onto Ko-fi. It's ko-fi.com/KatiePetersPlays to get behind the scenes. Not only do you get early access and little notes and stuff from me, but it's a fun way to support the podcast, and I really appreciate it. Before we dive in, remember, sometimes you feel like a spoiler and sometimes you don't. Today, we are watching Tucker and Dale vs. Evil from 2010. A movie that my moderators on Twitch have been asking me to watch for a very long time. Specifically Genova. Genova's been like, when are you going to watch it? And I keep accidentally calling it Dale and Tucker versus Evil, which as I was getting the information for the podcast, I was like, damn it is Tucker and Dale versus Evil. So I'm fixing it. I'm finally watching Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Again, from 2010, it's a horror comedy. It runs an hour, 29 minutes. So y'all know I love a nice movie around the 1 hour, 30-minute mark, and this one hits all the boxes for that. I looked a quick glance at the cast. Alan Tudyk is in this. I love Alan Tudyk. He was in Firefly, a bunch of like nerd core movies that speak to me. Also, Katrina Bowden, I think that's how you say her name. She was from 30 Rock. She was the secretary on 30 Rock, so I always remember her from that. But I didn't dive too deeply into the cast list, just saw a couple of the main actors in it. So always excited when I see Alan Tudyk. He's one of my favorite sci-fi actors of all time. So that alone gets some extra brownie points. But again, managing expectations. I don't want to disappoint my moderators on Twitch. I don't want them to be like, Katie, you finally watched this film that is so beloved. What if I tear this apart? I guess we'll find out. But I'm finally watching Tucker and Dale vs. Evil. What do I think it's about? Literally no clue. I think there's a chainsaw in it based upon the cover art for the film. I have a feeling there's going to be maybe satire about horror films. I'm going to say based upon the imagery that they have for there is Katrina Bowden in a bikini crawling out of what looks like a lake. I'm not entirely sure what I'm in for. I'm going to wager a guess that it's about two brothers who live in the forest, kind of like a Friday the 13th situation, and become victims of a serial killer type Freddy-esque situation and has to band together with some hot teens to fend off the baddies. I don't know. I don't know what this is about. I mean, Tucker and Dale versus Evil. So Tucker and Dale are not inherently the evil ones based upon the title of the film. So I want to see Tucker and Dale take on whatever is considered evil and maybe save some hot teens in the process. So that's what I think this film's about. Let's talk numbers. The budget for this film was $223,838. Pretty low budget. I don't think we've had one that's been really under $1 million very frequently. So this is only $223,000 budget-wise. Box office, worldwide, it made $5,224,938. So, cha-ching, it made some money. Obviously not like a Mission Impossible, but it made some cash. Honestly, when we did the Ring episode, I was shocked at how much the Ring made worldwide. I digress. Go listen to that episode. I believe this is a cult classic. The amount of times this film has been brought up in my community on Twitch and just in general makes me feel like it is a bit of a cult classic. It's from 2010, so it is 14 years old. as of the time I'm recording this. Where's time? What is time? I hate how quickly it's moving. I love horror. I love comedy. I'm hoping this will make me laugh. I haven't watched a good comedy in a long time. So this is combining two of my favorite genres. So I'm keeping fingers crossed. Again, expectations low. Keeping them low. Let's talk ratings. It has a 7.5 out of 10 for Internet Movie Database. Pretty good. That's not bad. That's passing, okay? 85% from Rotten Tomatoes. Intriguing. That's not too bad. Rotten Tomatoes, I feel like that's pretty high for Rotten Tomatoes. 65% from Metacritic. I also feel like that's pretty high. Over the years, Metacritic seems to always be around like a 50 a lot of the time. Like that seems to be where a lot of things land, or I'm imagining that. But 65% feels okay for Metacritic. But apparently, 92% of Google users like this film. The Google users at the end of the season have been like, oh, you talking crap about us, saying that we only do 86%. They're coming out of the woodwork, and there's reviews like Google users' ratings are fluctuating. This is, I think, the highest I've seen for a Google users rating. So 92% approve of Tucker and Dale versus Evil. So I guess without further ado, I'm going to dive into this film that I've been told I need to watch, I would say upwards of 100 times. And we're going to wrap up season 3 with Tucker and Dale versus Evil. And I'm going to let you all know what I think. Well. We've made it to the finale of season 3 of Katie Hasn't Seen That. I'm going to talk to you all about Tucker and Dale versus Evil. I finally watched it and I've got thoughts. So let's dive in. Thanks to Rotten Tomatoes. Let's get the basic understanding of what this film is together. Two scruffy pals. Backwoods vacation takes a bloody turn when ignorant college students mistake them for a pair of murderous hillbillies. I can confirm now I've never seen this film. This was my first time watching it because Mark was like, you have watched this. We've watched Tucker and Dale versus Evil. There was only one moment where I was like, this seems vaguely familiar, but it was because I believe I passed through a room. Somebody was watching this once and I just happened to pass through the room with, there was a chainsaw moment. And that's all I remember. I also got something wrong in the intro. The budget for this film from several different sources, I believe was $5 million. Not the 223,000 I thought. That was just like, I think it grossed domestically or something. I'm not entirely sure where I got that number, but it was a $5 million budget for this film. So the film starts. Let's just go into it. I mean, honestly, I don't want to spoil anything or how I felt about it. Let's just get right into this, okay? I gotta say though, this is the first time I think I've seen Tyler, is it Labine played Dale in it, and he was really good. And I love Alan Tudyk, so this was a really fun adventure to see them in. And I've seen a ton of Alan Tudyk stuff, so I'm glad to add another check mark of an Alan Tudyk film that I really enjoy to the list. It starts off with like this YouTube footage thing. It's like, hey, we're trying to investigate some stuff. It ends very bloodily for them. And then we cut to teens in a car and they're all talking about like, did you bring the beer? And like, oh, we forgot the beer and all this like very typical teen movie. These kids are only concerned about partying and having a good time on the lake. We're going camping. So we end that scene. They're trying to drive safely. One of the kids is a little like, oh my God, it's my dad's car. I got to be careful. And a truck pulls out and they have to swerve to miss it. And then later on, the truck pulls up next to him and it's Alan Tudyk and it's Tyler Labine. So Dale and Tucker, and they're just staring at them with their mouths open, like just, and it's really funny. You can tell that this movie is already going to be satire. It's a horror comedy. And right out the gate, you're like, oh, they're setting it up to be like, these guys are like scary backwoods people and we're getting nervous. So the teens are already wary of them as they have this interaction on the road. They have to stop at the gas station to get beer because they forgot the beer. And at this gas station, it's very much like hillbillies, you know, like, hey, we're going to get some stuff. And it's like setting up that we're not in the big city anymore vibe. This is kind of, I've never seen Sling Blade, but what I imagine they mean with Sling Blade. Do I need to watch Sling Blade? Let me know. There's a lot of staring. There's Dale wanting pickled eggs from the gas station. So they get this huge thing of pickled eggs and he's just eating the pickled eggs and he's staring at this character who we learn to know as Allison, played by Katrina Bowden. She's very beautiful and immediately, he's like, I got eyes for her kind of thing. And Tucker is like gassing him up. He's like, you need to just smile and laugh. And you need to just like go over and talk to her kind of thing. So he goes over and he talks to Allison and he brings a scythe with him and he stands there and Tucker's like, just make sure you smile and laugh. And so like he goes over and he says something like, you guys going camping? And it's like really creepy. And you can tell that they're setting up the juxtaposition of these college kids who are like, we don't want any trouble. Get away from us. And Tucker and Dale, who are just very normal guys, going to their vacation home to go fishing and fix up the place. But the way they do it is they show like each side of it. And they did it in a very good way where they show the satire and these teens are just like, they've made up in their mind, these people are creepy and we gotta stand our ground. So he seems like he's crazy after this interaction. They're like, we don't want to mess with you guys. Let's get in the car. They head out. They're headed to go to the campground. And so Dale's all down on himself. Apparently, like, Tucker is acting kind of like he's a ladies' man, giving advice to Dale. They're also drinking beer and driving, which I cannot condone or recommend. Drinking and driving is bad, but it's just constant that the beer is a fixture in their lives. And there's times later on where, like, Tucker uses beer to like pour on wounds and it's like a cure-all. Like beer seems like a cure-all. I can say that. But he sees a cop behind him, spills beer on his crotch, and then it looks like Dale is trying to help clean him up. But when the cop comes over, it kind of looks like maybe there is something salacious going on between Dale and Tucker, of a sexual variety. And somehow Dale's shirt gets taken off. It's kind of interesting how they did this. I don't know how they accomplished some of these things, but the film actually made me laugh quite a bit. I don't remember the last time I've laughed at a film this much. And I don't know if that's already a little bit of a spoiler for you all, but I just feel like there's some things that just worked with the comedy in this that actually got me giggling. We find out from this interaction with the cop that they're heading to their vacation home. And then the cop literally just says, there's nothing but pain and suffering up there. And it's just the most ominous out of the blue thing. Very much like a horror movie where you meet a cop or you go to a gas station, you get the ominous news. Like it's very much a trope, but they did a funny integration of it. They get to the cabin. It's all run down. There's like bones hanging from the ceiling. And they're like, wow, this is the dream. This is so beautiful. This is perfect. And they're like, oh, he was a news buff too, whoever lived here before. And there's just like articles about teenage murder. So like you can gather that this place was the site of maybe some horrible murderous things in the past, but they're too oblivious to it. Cuts to like, well, there's a trap in the house too that almost kills them. So this house is like booby trapped. And that little bit of like footage we see at the beginning of the film, you get the idea like, oh, maybe this is the house that took place in. Cuts to the teens telling stories around the campfire. This one kid, my God, named Chad. I thought his name was Jeff for the longest time, but his name is Chad, which is honestly a better name. It's very much frat boy names. Starts telling stories around the campfire. One of the things that happened 20 years ago, there was this huge massacre that happened, crazy people murdering everyone. And then they're all like, you guys want to go skinny dipping? And they go skinny dipping. Tucker and Dale are in a fishing boat and there's one beer left. And Dale goes, hey, you have it. It's your beer, Tucker. And then Tucker literally goes, this is why you'll never get ahead in life because you don't fight for yourself. And there's just like these one-liners that for some reason were very funny to me. I feel like it's hard to explain unless you've seen Tucker and Dale versus Evil, but the delivery of the lines from every single actor in this film is what makes it work. It really did a good job at setting up these characters so that you care about them, but also just the way that lines were delivered, because this movie's an hour and 29 minutes. And I feel like they fit things in such a way that it flowed really well. And especially if you're like me, who enjoys the horror genre and you enjoy comedy and satire, sometimes these films that are satire of horror can be really painful Specifically, like, I haven't seen all the Scary Movie franchises, but like there's a borderline with these kinds of movies where it's goofy and dumb and a little bit like slapsticky. And then there is like a satire that feels, it's so subtle and it's so underneath the skin that sometimes you know it's there, you know it's a joke, you know they're making fun of the genre, but it feels so smart. It just feels like such a good way to make fun of these kinds of films, like Friday the 13th, the camp counselor slasher type film. And they did a really good job with this because Tucker and Dale are pretty much like the gentle souls, and they just get themselves in a situation where the teens are their own worst enemy, essentially. They're doing the fishing. It's nighttime at the campground. They're doing their skinny dipping. Obviously, Allison is the hot, sexy college girl, and she's taking her clothes off. They did the sexy girl trope. She's about to jump into the water from on top of this rock. And I think that Tucker said something or they scared her, and she falls into the water. Clearly, she hits her head underneath on a rock or something. And they go, oh, we got to save her. So they're like, oh, gosh, they get in their canoe and they're like trying to get to her. Right. I also noticed like Tucker's so mean to Dale. But then they're getting the girl. They pull her out. You can see from like they have like a shot kind of from the shore where these college kids were and like pulling her into the boat. And they're yelling, we got your friend. And it's supposed to be meant as like a double meaning thing. We're like, we got your friend. Like, we're going to take care of your friend. But they're all screaming and running away, taking as like, we got your friend kind of vibe. So they're screaming. They're running back to go tell Chad and some other people at the camp. The music at this point felt very Friday the 13th-esque, and I could appreciate the tones and the things that they were doing with that. Allison wakes up in this rundown cabin that Tucker and Dale have now, right? Dale's bringing her food and she's like, what do you want? It's so scary. And she's like bringing her pancakes and she's super confused because he's a nice guy, but she thinks he's evil. Cuts back to the camp and they're all like, I don't know. It was dark and it seemed like one of them was eating her face and like, it's clearly not what happened. So I enjoyed getting to see the juxtaposition of what these college kids were thinking was going on and these stories they were making up to what the reality is. So these kids are like, we got to save Allison. And like Chad's just getting more and more mad. There is a point in this story, too, where Chad comes on to Allison. He's really forceful and he gives you the ick. He's the kind of guy that you just don't. He's a red flag kind of guy. So Chad is like trying to kiss Allie. And she's like, and he says to her, you don't need to act like you're better than us, like all those types of things. And she's like, I'm going to go to the beach. And that's why she ends up going swimming. But literally, Chad is the kind of guy who's just way too intense. Something's kind of off. And we find out later on why something's kind of off with Chad. But the kids are like, oh, God, we got to save Allison. And later on, Dale brings food to Allison and he's like, we saved you. And she's like, you're spying on us. And it's just so interesting to see how quickly they shift the narrative to you're the problem. You're the scary bad in this world. And there's this whole alluding to the fact that because they, they're quote unquote hillbillies, that they're scary inherently because of that because they're like different than them, that's what makes them scary. So there's like kind of like a little satire line that they toe with that of like, because you're a hillbilly. They have a bonding moment though, and you can tell that they're like Allison and Dale are kind of vibing a little bit. And Dale's the one who was eating the pickled eggs at the beginning and like she's beautiful kind of thing. And so they're starting to see a little bit more eye to eye, and it's kind of sweet getting to see them together. Then all these kids end up going to the cabin to try to save Allison, and they're doing rock, paper, scissors outside. And one of them goes like 4 out of 7 best before like, because that's the person who's going into the cabin to try to help save Allison. There's just lines like that. And the way that the actors across the board, like I said, delivered the stuff is the only reason this works. I don't know. Oh, I found out actually the person who directed this film, Eli Craig, I didn't know this. He did Zombieland, which I have seen. I really did like Zombieland. I've never saw the second Zombieland, but I believe that maybe they worked on the second one. I don't know. They may not have. They also did that movie Little Evil, which I haven't seen. Maybe I should add that one to the list, but I very much enjoyed Zombieland. So when I found out that he also did Tucker and Dale versus Evil, I was like, oh, that kind of makes sense. They've got a similar feel to them. Zombieland came out in what year? 2009. So this movie, Zombieland came out hold on. Okay, scratch all that. I think I was really mistaken. He did not do Zombieland. He did Zombieland, the TV show. So scratch all that. I was giving wrong information. Okay. I'd be very curious to see more of what this director did. Eli Craig. I thought that he had done Zombieland the movie, but it looks like he did Zombieland the TV series. But I'm very much interested in seeing perhaps what other features they have directed, because I very much appreciated the way that this was stylized. At this moment in time, Tucker's outside with a chainsaw trying to fix up this house. And then he comes running around the house because the chainsaw is acting up. There's like smoke coming out of it. The chainsaw's going crazy and he's like waving it all around. And this kid is running away from Tucker because he's so afraid of Tucker that he impales himself on a tree. And I literally gasped. My mouth fell open. I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. And so Tucker wasn't intending that. The kid just ran into a tree and impaled himself because they were running so quickly. And then Tucker gets into a bee's nest. Chad is out of control. One of the girls is like, my phone's not reaching anybody. We need to call for help. He grabs the phone and he smashes it. And I'm like, Chad, you gotta at least have the phone as an option. But he broke it. The college kids are yelling. It's just such a mess. Tucker goes back. He's got stings all over his face. He's like, these kids are out of control. It's just all these misunderstandings leading to some very horrific endings. And they're like, well, let's go out. So Tucker and Dale go out. And they're like, we got to leave a message for them. And so in a tree stump, they carve out the words, we got your friend, which is also super menacing seeming. So when the kids find it, they're like, wow, we got to attack them. So they come up with a plan to attack Tucker and Dale at the cabin. They show up. One of the guys got a spear. He starts running full speed at Dale and Allison, because they're like digging a hole, trying to just fix up the place. And then they fall into this dirt hole. Allison gets hit with the shovel, so she passes out. Dale lands in the hole, and this kid runs with a spear, and he lands on a spear, and he kills himself. And I'm just sitting there like, oh my God. So this kid's just like dead. And then there's this guy who goes to punch Tucker, and Tucker's working with a wood chipper. And then the guy misses the punch and he falls into the wood chipper, and Tucker's trying to pull him out, and his body is very much getting Fargoed, and he's just like trying to pull him out. And then at the end, when he finally turns off the wood chipper, he's like, are you okay? And clearly he's not. He did in fact get Fargoed. So then he goes inside and he's like, Dale, these teens seem like they've got a suicide pact because they're all going crazy and killing themselves. They're like, maybe we should call the police. He's like, no, would they come onto my property and they have the suicide pact and they're just dying everywhere? But one of the other kids got down from the campground, took his dad's car, and finds the cops, bring him back up. We realize that Chad is a little bit off his rocker. This is like, you see that Chad character, he's very unlikable. And like, as the movie goes on, he's just like, the wheels are coming off more and more. You're like, this guy's not right. He's getting more and more intense about it. And he's really upset about it. The guy comes back with the cops. Tucker and Dale, they're like, let's go. Okay, the cops get all the kids in the car. They're like, let's go to this house and we're going to investigate it. So they all drive over there. And at this moment, Tucker and Dale are trying to get the body out of the wood chipper. And it's like half of a body and they're dragging it. The cop gets there and is like, what's going on? And the cop goes into the house. And immediately I was like, he's going to get hit with a booby trap. And the kids in the car are like, why aren't they arresting him? And it's very much the trope of the cops just being like, there's like bodies all over the place. And they're like, let's go into the house. So they go into the house and a booby trap comes out of the ceiling and hits him in the face. It's like a piece of wood with a bunch of nails in it. And he's just like coming outside, he's stumbling and he just falls over. And so the cop's laying there, and then one of the kids, oh my God, I forgot. There's the cop's gun, right? One of the kids grabs the cop's gun, because the cop's dead now and is aiming it at Tucker and Dale, and he's trying to shoot. Nothing's coming out. So Dale's like, you got to turn the safety off. He turns the safety off and he ends up shooting himself. And then he dies. So then Chad, I keep forgetting. Chad gets out and starts shooting at them. Oh my God. There's just so much that happens in such a short amount of time. And then they're in the house and they're getting shot at, and like they're hiding. And this is the moment where we reach like the third act of the film where Tucker and Dale are kind of having like a heartfelt moment. And Dale's like, I don't even like fishing. And it's like this stuff where like Tucker's like, what? You don't like fishing? And you can tell like, oh, there's going to be some tension between the two of them. But literally, they're just being two normal guys. And all of this stuff is happening around them. And these kids are essentially picking themselves off one by one and thinking it's Tucker and Dale doing it. The college kids take Dale's dog. And of course, none of us are happy about that. None of us feel good about that. None of us are okay with it. So Tucker's like, I'm going to go free the dog. You cover me with like a nail gun. So they're trying to do this. Tucker ends up freeing Dale's dog. I think the dog's name was Janger, which is such a random name. And like Tucker is freeing the dog and the college kids are literally going, we're going to kill your dog. And then Dale's like, I'm going to be so mad if you do that. I'm going to be so mad. And it's just, the movie dialogue feels kind of very realistic. Like there's a moment earlier in the film that made me laugh quite a bit where Dale is talking to Allison and he's saying like, me and Tucker, Tucker and I brung you here or something like that. And it was just, there's just something about the writing that I really enjoyed. So Tucker frees the dog. They kidnap Tucker. They capture him. They end up cutting off some of Tucker's fingers and dropping them off at the cabin where Allison and Dale are. She goes outside. She's like, maybe I can talk some sense into them. She sees all the death around them. She brings in the fingers and Dale goes, oh my God, they cut off his bowling fingers. And again, got a laugh out of me. They go looking for Tucker. He finds Tucker and it's a trap. They like strung him upside down, obviously. They've got some things booby trapped. So like a spike kind of thing flies down, narrowly misses Dale, but Dale came to rescue Tucker. And then the other college kids show up to rescue Allison. And Allison's like, there's a huge misunderstanding here. But you slowly see that like Chad is much more off his rocker. One of the other girls is like, this is like Stockholm syndrome. And Chad's like, are you in love with him? Are you in love with that guy? And is so upset. And then Dale and Tucker get back. And essentially Allison is a psych major in college. She wants to be a therapist. So she starts holding like a therapy session between Chad and Dale. And this is where we find out about Chad's parents and why he's so upset. Because the hillbillies allegedly killed his dad and didn't know that he was in the womb at the time and was a part of this massacre that happened. And so everybody's like, oh, wow, that's really heavy. And Dale's like, yeah, man, I really am glad we got to talk about this because I didn't even know about that. And it seems like they're kind of coming to a common ground. And then two of the other teens that got separated show up. And then more people die. Like one of them catches on fire and then someone throws moonshine on them and then they die even faster. It's just and then the cabin blows up. The three of them get out. So everybody essentially, in theory, dies in this cabin except for Allison, Dale, and Tucker. And then we see Chad survives with like a half burned body. They're like, we need to get out of here. They get into the truck. They're trying to escape because we realize here that Chad is the real problem. Chad is very much not a safe person to be around. They crash the car. Allison gets kidnapped. Tucker and Dale have a very heartfelt moment. We know that the doggy's okay, which is a big part of why I enjoyed this film. Doggy's okay. And Tucker is literally like, having to explain, like, we used to catch frogs as a kid. And I used to say, oh, I let you catch more frogs than me. But he said, I didn't let you win. You always caught more frogs than me. And it's like this really sweet moment. And essentially Tucker telling Dale, you're very capable. And he says something like, you're not as ugly as you think you are and all these things. And so Dale has this sense of confidence. His friend Tucker is cheering him on and he's going to rescue Allison. They go to this lumber mill because Chad is like literally Two-Face from Batman, half burned, tying Allison up to this sawmill and is going to cut her in half. Very typical horror movie of him. And it's this whole sequence where Dale is rescuing Allison. It's actually a pretty fun sequence of chainsaw, metal pipes, axes, saving Allison. Essentially, they run upstairs to the top of this lumber mill and they find all these things. We also find out early on that chamomile tea is something that Chad is allergic to. And so they find chamomile tea up there, as well as a news article that pretty much says that Chad is half hillbilly because his mother survived it, but may have been attacked by one of these hillbillies and one of these murderous hillbillies. So he has it in his blood. So he comes upstairs and he's all like, they try to like explain to him, but he's still very murderous and upset. And so he Dale takes some chamomile tea and blows it in his face like dust. And he kind of like freaks out, and Dale's like, he'll be fine. Like, if we can get him like an EpiPen type thing, he'll be fine, or his inhaler. There's also a moment early in the film where Chad smokes a cigarette and then takes a hit of an inhaler right away. And I was like, just the oxymoron of that alone is upsetting, but I appreciate what they were trying to do with that. In this situation, Dale is also saying, if we get him his inhaler, he'll be fine, but he's flailing and he falls out of like a 2-story barn window and essentially dies on the ground below. End of the film. Tucker's in the hospital. He's getting better. Dale brings him a beer to drink. He's got new they found his fingers, but one of them's definitely not his fingers because it's got like a manicure on it. But he gets his fingers sewn back on. He's having a beer and he's pretty much saying like, you got a date with Allison, right, Dale? And Dale's making jokes, but essentially they go on a bowling date and that's like the ending of the film. They go on a bowling date, Dale and Allison, and it's kind of like a happy ending. And that's Dale and Tucker versus Evil. I finally watched it. All right, I gotta say to my mods, specifically Genova, I'm not angry you made me watch Tucker and Dale versus Evil. I actually really liked it. I don't know if you could tell throughout me explaining this film that I actually very much enjoyed Tucker and Dale versus Evil. So I did it. Now when you're in chat, none of you can say you haven't seen Tucker and Dale versus Evil. You never watched that for me. You never have. I can say I have. From the top of my heart, I have. And I actually really liked it. This movie was my kind of humor. I haven't laughed this much at a film in a very long time. I know I have an affinity and a love of Alan Tudyk, but I really became a fan of the actor who played Dale. I just feel like the film worked. It was fun. It had actual horror elements to it that weren't cheap and they weren't like goofy and awkward. It just flowed really well. The film itself was one of the best flowing horror satires I've ever seen. So if you have not seen Tucker and Dale versus Evil, I would say you should watch it. And I would also say, like, I would maybe watch this film again. And I don't think have I ever said that on Katie Hasn't Seen That? I don't think there's been many films that I'm like, oh yeah, I'd watch that movie again. But I think I might want to watch Tucker and Dale versus Evil sometime again. So I guess that's a win. I mean, a fitting way to end season 3 of Katie Hasn't Seen That. The delivery is what made this movie work for me. The actors, how they delivered the lines, the characters they portrayed, while some of them very stereotypical, it's just the writing was smart. The directing, how they shot things was really fun. The horror elements were done properly and in a way that made them go like, oh, this could have been like in a regular old slasher film. So it's a fun twist on the horror genre. And I really, really liked it. I actually really did. I can't believe we're on episode 10 already of Katie Hasn't Seen That. Y'all have to let me know what you thought of this season. Y'all have to let me know what your favorite film was. I think this was one of the first seasons where I enjoyed more movies than I ever have for Katie Hasn't Seen That. I was also realizing recently, like, oh, I'm starting to have seen films. Like, it's Katie Has Seen That. I've occasionally asked people, like, well, what movies you recommend? Obviously, I haven't seen them all. Nobody has. But I really do feel like I'm getting to the point where Katie has seen most of it. Not really. Maybe Katie's seen some of it. Maybe that's where we're headed. But I want to know if you've seen Tucker and Dale versus Evil, if you enjoyed Tucker and Dale versus Evil, and if you agree with me. I'm actually very curious to see what y'all will say about this one, because this one spoke to me. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun, and I actually would recommend this to people to watch. So I get it now. I get now why you all wanted me to watch Tucker and Dale versus Evil, and I'm sorry it took so long to get to it, but I did it. And now we're here. So what would I give Tucker and Dale versus Evil? I've sat with it. I've watched it. I'm actually going to change my rating. I'm going to give it a 9.5 out of 10 hilarious and murderous misunderstandings. I had it at a 9, but as I've been talking about this, I'm like, no, we're going to make it a 9.5. This is probably one of the most fun I've had with a movie in a very long time. I've actually been talking recently about how I feel like I've lost a little bit of my love of movies in the sense of just when I was a kid, it was such a fun escape for me. I used to love looking up the trivia. I used to love watching where they filmed things. Just the movie magic of it all. I feel like I haven't had that spark as much lately. And I think this season of Katie Hasn't Seen That because I've watched more films that I've actually enjoyed. I'm grateful to have seen so many films because I feel like starting from the inception of this podcast to now, I get a lot more references. I feel like I'm a part of the conversation more when it comes to like these pop culture type things. And I feel like that has been a really nice thing. Like in general, feeling like I'm not the person going like, what are you talking about? Oh, yeah, guys, totally. Yeah, that sounds like really fun. But now I can be like, oh, I can contribute to this conversation. Yes, I may have hated the movie Dune, but I know what it means to say, let the spice flow. So there's things like that. And I think there's a little bit of merit to that, to weirdly feeling less alone in a conversation when people say they love the movies that maybe I didn't fully enjoy, but I can actually contribute to the discussion and understand where they're coming from that I couldn't do before. Like I still have to say, Goonies is not a movie for me, but I can appreciate why it is meaningful to some people. I don't know, I'm just going on a little bit of a tangent here, but I did very much enjoy Tucker and Dale versus Evil. I feel like this season of Katie Hasn't Seen That, watched a lot more films that fit the niche of who I am and maybe touched a little more love buttons in my heart. Is that a thing people say? I don't know, but it is now. And so, yes, thank you so much for listening to season 3 of Katie Hasn't Seen That. I still got comments from all of you and a little bit of trivia, but I can't believe we're already at the end of this season. So let me know what you thought of the season. Let me know if you liked the video additions to each episode over on YouTube. Let me know what you thought of the season as a whole. I'd love to know. Tell me about movies you love. I love talking to you and connecting with you all about movies and things that speak to you from a cinematic perspective. So come over to my stream too on Twitch, KatiePetersPlays. I love talking to people about films. I love getting recommendations for films. I love giving recommendations for films. So come say hi to me there. So let's do some trivia for Tucker and Dale versus Evil before I go down a sappy rabbit hole again. There was not as much trivia for this film as I thought there would be, but I did find a few nuggets that I would share with you. Apparently, this film was shelved for over 3 years before it was finally released. That's wild to me. I want to know why. That's all the fun facts said, and I would like to know why it was shelved for 3 years. It's a great film. It's so fun. And I'm really glad they released it. When Chuck runs off to get the sheriff, he clearly trips in the background, but the scene cuts before he hits the ground. I'm really sad I didn't notice that, and I kind of want to rewatch that scene just to see if I catch that moment before the actor falls, because I think that stuff's kind of fun. And I like including this in case you haven't seen this film or you want to watch it again, you can watch for that moment. In that scene where Tucker has the chainsaw and he hits the beehive, he started running and moving his arms in a parody homage to the film The Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 1974. And I think that's a really fun thing. It feels like they paid homage to a lot of classic horror. I specifically think of Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, some of those films that are like deeply ingrained in the horror genre. And I feel like they did a really fun job playing with that and making it fun and funny. So those are some trivia facts from Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Hello. I hope you enjoyed the finale episode of Katie Hasn't Seen That. This movie made me laugh so much. As I was prepping this episode, I remembered how much I enjoyed watching Tucker and Dale versus Evil. And I feel like it was a really fitting way to end season 3. Just to have something that made me laugh, was the perfect length, all that good stuff. Don't forget to do your Katie Hasn't Seen That season 3 bingo card. And I don't have any comments this episode. Why, you might ask? I'm in Italy and I won't be able to do the comments. So I thought, it is the end of the season. I appreciate everybody who's commented and shared their thoughts on all the movies throughout the entire season that we've done. I did things a little different this year. I did a video version. I tried to do a variety of films from across many different eras and genres, and I just hope you enjoyed it. And if you did enjoy this season, let me know. And if you have any recommendations for more movies, I'm always down. I really appreciate that anybody listens to this podcast. It's a passion project for me. And it's something that kind of came out of a joke and grew into something different and bigger. And so thank you all for listening. I appreciate each and every one of you. Please know, take care of yourselves. I'm going to sign this off the way that I sign off my Twitch streams. The podcast might be done for now, but you can come see me on Twitch, and I stream 3 days a week over there. So come see me at twitch.tv/KatiePetersPlays. So I'm going to sign off this episode like I do over on my Twitch streams, where it's wear your sunscreen, eat your fiber, drink some water, and do something for yourself. You all deserve to take care of yourselves. And you know what? Maybe that is watching a movie you've had on your list forever. Watch that movie. Do it. That's something you can do to take care of yourself. Make a little popcorn moment, get a blanket, all that. And I really appreciate y'all. And one of the things I also have coming in on my news blotter right now is that you're all cute. And everybody who listens to this podcast is absolutely a cutie patootie. So thank you all for listening. I'll catch you all in the future, creating some sort of content. You can find me everywhere, and just come say hi to me. I appreciate you. Thank you for listening. If you want to hang out with me more, or if you just want to yell at me for my thoughts on a specific movie, I stream over on Twitch at www.twitch.tv/KatiePetersPlays. If you'd like to support the podcast and buy me a coffee to fuel my reviews, you can over on Ko-fi at www.ko-fi.com/KatiePetersPlays. You can join my Discord to discuss the movies I review with other Katie Hasn't Seen That fans by visiting discordapp.com/invite/KatiePetersPlays. If you enjoy Katie Hasn't Seen That, please leave a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. It helps others find the show. Also, feel free to follow and chat with me on Twitter at PlayKatiePlay and on Instagram and YouTube at KatiePetersPlays. Music written and performed by Mark Can Do It. Katie Hasn't Seen That is a part of the Geek Generation Network.